No, thank you so much for being able to speak with me. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. I found your film to be very moving, disturbing at times, but ultimately very hopeful. And I think a lot of people, the film will resonate with a lot of people. So I
Oh,
guess I just wanted to start off by saying thank you for taking the time to put together something so thoughtful and considerate.
thank you, George. That's very kind. And those are the important things that we want to get across. So thank you.
Yeah, no, of course, you definitely do get that across. I wanted to kind of start off things asking you, what made you want to tell this story?
Well, I have grown up I grew up around art. I am grown up. And my my parents became avid collectors of a lot of artists, including H.C. Westermann. So I was exposed from a pretty early age. My prior film was Harry Who and the Chicago Images, in which I paid homage to those artists. Hopefully not in a just hagiographic way, but um, this is a different approach. I have found Westermann's work to be so profoundly moving. It has that combination of um, really scathing humor, born of many years on the front lines of World War II and Korea, and surviving that, and the guilt of that, and the shame of that, and also dealing with kind of toxic male masculinity that he was um, thrust into just by being of his time, having been born in 1922. And in spite of that, this really tough guy was also one of the most sensitive, feeling, impassioned people who felt like he was an artist from the start in a family where there was, no one in his family before, except for his grandfather, who had made coffins, but also had done a lot of woodworking. And although Westerman was 4 when his grandfather died, the sense that there was a someone in the family with a creative spirit, um, I think gave him a little bit of a sense of, okay, this can be me too, even though for his grandfather, it was a much different situation. Um, One thing I struggled with is that I wanted to do a film about women, about female artists. And the problem is, I just have fallen so deeply in love with Westerman's work and felt that I had to do it anyway. And uh, the timing is tough because of all the things that are going on in our world right now. And I, above all people, feel like I want to put women and um, liminalized people front and center. But Westerman uh, touched me, and I had to do it. And and uh, having the opportunity to read all of his letters that we could get our hands on, um, and then follow those breadcrumbs to these wonderful artists like Ed Ruscha, Frank Gehry, William T. Wiley, Billy Al Bankston, 2 of whom we have now lost. Um, they were his best pals. Ken Price, of course, who died before we made the film, but Happy Price, his widow, is in the film. And um, they talk about, these art heroes of mine talk about how Westerman was their art hero, and that it also empowered them in the sense of, it was okay to be a man. You could be a manly man and you could still be a really sensitive artist. And as the film reveals in the interviews with these other artists, they couldn't imagine surviving the wars that Westerman survived and still keep their creative souls intact. But so it was a big admiration society. And it's really fun to see Frank Gehry, for example, in his when we filmed in his offices, his the miniatures that he does of buildings are like, you know well, Frank Gehry talks about how he loved when Westerman built up his art from these smaller sculptures and quote boxes to this life-size house that he built with his own hands, with his wife, a fellow artist, Joanna Biel, who studied with Joseph Albers at Yale. And the thing is, art history kind of, I think of it as going in kind of, you can't see me, I'm drawing
Yeah.
ovals in the air where they sort of go back and forth and kind of like a spirograph. I don't know if you know what a spirograph is,
No, I'm sorry.
but okay, but uh where art history goes forward and back and forward and back always. And just as it became time for the Harry Who in Chicago images, the timing for them was very good. I mean, for the film was very good because of um a lot of things coming around in the art world to what they were doing again. And that's the same thing with Westerman. Craft was always considered kind of a bad word in art for a long time. Um, his work is not just about craft, as he said, it's about the idea. But his workmanship, whatever he was making, whether it was with glass, metal, wood, lithographs, it was to the ultimate uh, level of skill because he had to, because this was his way of living and surviving what was basically an albatross on his shoulders for his whole life, a sense of why did he survive? How
Hmm.
could he justify his life? And I think that in this time we're living in, there's so much that's tough. And there are a lot of people fighting different kinds of wars, whether it's actual wars or immigration, migration, global warming, political mayhem. Um, the question always remains, how do you hold on to hope in spite of all? And he did. And to me, it's still a miracle. And when I feel at a low ebb about things going on in the world, I feel like art is the way to help us through and remind us that our spirits and our creativity can somehow lead us out of these very dark places.
Mm.
And I hold on to that. And I hope that the viewers will feel it too and feel inspired by him. Yeah,
No,
sorry.
I definitely think that viewers will come away with that. I had no idea who Westermann was and his background and everything, so it was informative in that sense. But I also think, as you touched on, there's a lot of universal aspects of his story that resonate. You did touch on something that I wanted to ask you about, that balance between the kind of manly man toxic masculinity and
Yeah,
the standards not only of expectations of men at the time, but also men in the military at the time
yeah,
compared to this, like you said, this more sensitive, more personable, intimate side of things. I'm wondering, I found that to be one of the film's most fascinating kind of themes, I guess, to come up, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
sure. I'm so glad, George, because it's especially important at this time that when people watch the film, and for example, hear Martha, his sister, talk about his first marriage. Um, Spoiler alert. Um, well, I'll just say that it failed and that he, I'll say more, that his first wife was either lesbian or other sexually. And at that time, there wasn't permission to think about things in that way. And for him, he felt humiliated. As Martha said, he thought he should be able to fix it, which is today like a horrible
Yeah.
concept. I have a transgender child, and um, who very much appreciated those sections of the film, actually, because they are so grateful to be living at a time where you can reveal these parts of, not just reveal these parts of yourself, but accept them,
Mm.
embrace them, and that the language to explain it to other people is much more sophisticated. But yes, the culture of the Marines, tattoos at that time being very different than they are now in a lot of ways, being emblematic of I am strong, I am patriotic, which of course he he became very anti-war. But in terms of it's tough. It was tough including some of those interview portions because my concern and my, discussing it with my team was, will people understand that we're not condoning how he felt at that time? We're not.
Mm.
It it just is. It is what it was, and he wanted to die because he felt like he was a failure as a man, and what a disservice that was to him and to his ex-wife. Um, and yeah, so he went off to Korea hoping he would die, and he didn't. And Um, and then his marriage to Joanna uh, was really an amazing one. They were both artists. They created together. They each had their own studio. It was quite an evolution. Um, or put it this way, finally he found kind of an equal partner, and and that was hugely helpful. As we know, for all people, it just can be helpful to find a partner. But David McCarthy, one of the art historians who, as you know, is in the film, who speaks, I think has great insight into Westermann and art and war. And if people want to read further about it, um, uh, David McCarthy's works on Westermann are really great to read. And he addresses this problem of toxic masculinity much more. Interestingly, you know, I'm not, this is sort of tangential, but, Westermann uh, read Moby Dick twice. He was obsessed with Melville. And what's interesting about that is to be on a whaling ship, you certainly have to be a quote, manly man. At the same time, the character of Ishmael was very feeling, and he actually survived by holding on to what was a death ship, really. Queequeg, the character that he became so close to, had this little death ship coffin created for him, which is so weird because that Westermann's works deal with a lot of death ship coffins. And at the end, this very manly man, Ishmael, but also very, very feeling, is saved by this coffin death ship popping up from the ocean. And I think that that's sort of the feeling that I wanted to give, that in Westermann, creating all these death ships and coffins, and he saved himself.
Hmm. No, I definitely got that point from the movie, and it was um touching. I think he says I died a thousand deaths to become an artist, and
Yes.
that line just like really sticks with me.
Oh,
And
God.
frankly, the whole movie really stuck with me. And I'm hoping that the film reaches its audience. It was really lovely to speak with you about the movie. I wish you the best of success with the movie and promoting it and everything. And we're more than happy to help spread the word over at our team here.
George, thank you so much for your time. It was really lovely speaking with you.
Thank you so much. Take care, Leslie.
You too, George.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.